You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk, or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just text FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911 right now to get started. That's FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911. Auto financing the easy way. Text FINANCE to 357-911.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
A purple mountain majesties.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining for immediate release. It is April 1st. Oh, my Lord, it's April Fool's Day, 2019. I'm Bill O'Reilly, and I am here with my co-host, Liz Neuerfeld. How are you tonight, Liz?
Hey, Billy, how are you? This is a wonderful new technology we have for our recording. It's terrific.
Do we find? Yeah, we are trying something called Zencastr to hopefully improve the audio that we've had previously, which hasn't been so hot, and it seems to be working. We had a couple little glitches getting it set up, but it seems great. Zencastr, Zencastr, is the name of it, and I think as long as you use Chrome, it seems to be happy.
No, and I think our goal here is to start taking calls from our audience over the next couple of weeks, and this technology should allow us to do that. So fingers crossed that's going to happen.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be great stuff. You could ask us curveball questions, and I'll pass them to Liz, or we'll get Matthew. We'll get Matthew back on, and he can hit the curveball.
Oh my Lord! Well, we've got a lot to talk about. There's been so much going on since we last convened. But should we start with your trip to Cuba, or do you want to finish with Cuba? Okay, tell us all about it.
It was an absolutely amazing trip, and I've got to say I'm one of those people who was always very down on Cuba because I've had Cuban American friends that lost everything during in the Castro regime. But I've got to say that it absolutely blew me away. I went when did I go? I went down with my wife and two of my daughters to meet our third daughter who's studying at the University of Havana as part of an exchange program, and we went down on Wednesday and came back on Saturday. And I have a lot of different thoughts on it. First of all, Liz, it is the easiest trip to make. We jumped on at JFK in New York, and I know there's flights from other cities in the country. It's a direct flight. From JFK, it took us under 3 hours to get there, which makes no sense to me because Miami is usually like 3:20. And
was JetBlue the only one who flies down there?
It was JetBlue, the only one that flies there. There was nothing tricky. You just buy a visa at the counter, and it was $50. And there's they don't give you lie detector tests or anything. You just give them the money. And the flight was somewhere around $300 round trip, which is pretty amazing. And so you get on in JFK in our case, and 3 hours later you're literally in another world. And I had lived in the Caribbean when I was in my early 20s. I lived in Tortola in the British Virgin Islands, and so I was expecting it more that completely different. It was, and I loved Tortola and had great times there and still have friends there. But this was, I mean, obviously the Spanish influence was, intense, but it's just a stunningly beautiful place with architecture that just will make you cry. It's so gorgeous, but you can see, you spend half the time appreciating what's there now and half the time thinking, oh, can you imagine what this was 70 years ago? And I can't believe it's been 70 years or 60 some odd years ago. But it is amazing. The people are fantastic. It's affordable. We packed as much as you possibly can into 3 days. We hired a guide who speaks 9 languages, who is a friend's cousin, and I think she's an American citizen, I believe, although she grew up around the world. And we went to the ballet of all places. For me, we went to a Flamingo Ballet in their Grand National Theater, which was, you could have been in Vienna. I mean, it's really, really quite an experience, and I would super highly recommend it and recommend getting a guide. But it's so inexpensive. We were able to hire for $100 like their top art professor in the country, because they only make between $11 and $17 a month. That's their salaries. And so they're allowed to do stuff on the side now. I think after the Soviets collapsed in 93 and 94, they started to allow private enterprise. So you have private restaurants, you have the regular government restaurants, but you have the private restaurants, and you could be in Tribeca. I mean, they're like, they're chic. They're like downright chic. And so this guide we were able to get for, $100 to travel with us for 2 days. And she just knew everything. You could point to something and she knew the whole history of it. And she cried when we left because she kind of felt attached to my youngest daughter. And we, I sat with a top Cuban economist for a couple of hours. He came to our Airbnb. It was really an amazing experience. It's going to take me a while to kind of debrief myself on it. Like I was going to write a column, but I don't know what to write yet. I've got to get perspective because I'm still an American looking at Cuba from that perspective. But it was very interesting standing for at least a short time on the Cuban shore, looking north and trying to see things from their perspective. And it was, it's worth considering before jumping into, to writing something that stays on paper forever.
So, talk about, just even logistically, can you move around freely? Do you have access to cash at ATM machines? Or did you feel safe? And what's the
great questions. First of all, 100% safe, 100%. And Havana it's crumbled and it's now being rebuilt. And the old Havana, which reminds me of kind of like Florence. You could be in any old, Florence or I haven't been to Spain, but I assume that it would have flavors of a lot of this old Spanish cities, like cathedrals and stuff. So it's crumbled. So you'd think you would feel unsafe. There's a lot of things that are gaping holes in buildings and that type of stuff just from, the wonders of socialism will do that. But there's zero thoughts about safety whatsoever, like zero. And the interesting thing is, which I didn't realize, is there are no drugs in Cuba. And I guess having a severe penalty for these things makes a difference. But there are absolutely no drugs in Cuba. There's no gambling in Cuba. There's no prostitution in Cuba. There's no pornography in Cuba. It was outlawed with the internet when it came in. And so they've had internet they started to roll it out about 10 years ago, and you can get it. So what happens is you go to a Wi-Fi spot, and all the parks have Wi-Fi spots. And the Airbnb that we stayed in was a Wi-Fi spot. Once you get in there, you have to put numbers in from a card that you buy, and it's typically $1 for an hour of Wi-Fi service. And then you can use WhatsApp or something like that to make your phone calls. You can also use AT&T or Verizon or whatever you might have in the U.S. Sprint, but it would cost a fortune. So if anyone's going down there, you immediately go into airplane mode when you get there. Because it's the roaming charges are ridiculous, and it's 50 cents a text or $3 or $4 a minute on the phone. So you definitely want to talk on WhatsApp or BlackBerry Messenger or one of those things that works over the internet. The internet's pretty good where you get it. It's a pain to put the cards in. I mean that's a bit of a pain. There is no in the airport on the way back, we stopped and we saw for the first time Visa and MasterCard signs, and I was very excited. I said, "Oh, I can buy some people cigars and rum." And so I'd forgotten that Visa and MasterCard work for everyone else in the world, but not for us because we don't have trade relations. So no, you can't do any credit cards there. Everything is done in cash. They have two currency. One is the Cuban peso, which their citizens use, and the other is called the CUC. I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it's money for tourism. And the CUC is a lot more valuable to the peso. I mean, dramatically. What's quite interesting, Liz, is that the government employees, which include professors, all the academics, or anyone who works for the government, and the vast majority, I think, works for the government, is paid between $11 and $17 a month. That's the salary. So I think the professor we had was maybe being paid $14 a month. And this is someone that travels all over the world, is invited all over the world to lecture. Same with the economist, somewhere in that range. But because there's a second currency for the tourists, somebody who has a cab, and we'll talk about the cars in a second, can make $250, $500 a month. So the leading professors, the leading government officials are making, say $15 a month. And the guy down the street renting a bicycle out to people a pedicab or doing a car can make hundreds of dollars a month. And so it's totally out of whack. And apparently they're trying to figure out what to do with that, because it's like it's fouling up their entire system. And it's just kind of an irony. I'll give you a sense, like, they have a John Lennon statue there, and I didn't really like John Lennon, to be honest with you, but my wife certainly did, and my daughters wanted to go see the John Lennon statue, which is in a park. And we got there, and they were sitting next to John Lennon for a photo, and an old lady, she must have been in her 80s, came walking up, and she had like a license thing around her neck, a what do you call the things you hang around your neck in at a convention? The
ID tags, right? The badge, the credential.
The credentials, yeah, the credentials around her neck. But she walked over and she put, she said, "Oh, los ópticos," or what? Los ópticos, the glasses. So she put glasses on John Lennon's face, and then we said, "Oh, thank you so much, And I was thinking, do we tip her? Because I've been told don't give money to anybody in public; they can get in trouble for that. And so, like tip wise. And so they took the picture, and then she took the glasses away. And when we walked back, I said, "What were the credentials around her neck?" And they said, "Well, that's her job credentials. That's her government job." And I said, "What's her job?" And they said, "Putting the glasses on John Lennon when tourists come." And that's an official government job. And I said, "You got to be kidding me." And she said, "Welcome to Cuba."
She could have said, "Welcome to Washington," too, for that matter.
Yeah, no, it's true. It makes absolutely no sense, no sense whatsoever. So it's also, by the way, there's no guns in Cuba, which of course Castro took over using guns and then banned them. But that actually, ironically, it does help you feel safe on the street. And I'm not making I am not making a judgment on the U.S. side, because I'm generally a Second Amendment guy, but there's no guns around, and that there's no shootings, there's no stabbings. You can walk around at any hour of the day or night. The hotels are there, like you can see where Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky and Santo Trafficante and all those guys came in and pumped in hundreds of millions of dollars into these majestic hotels that are still there, and the Cubans are now bringing in investment, and they're bringing them back. And old Havana got a lot of money. Apparently, the woman that brought us down there, whose name is Cookie, is a friend's cousin. She's just fantastic. And she, when she got there in 93 or 94, old Havana she said everything was just literally falling apart, like collapsing on the street. And UNESCO came in and put a lot of money into it, and they treated the sites as historic. And we even had dinner on O'Reilly Street in Havana, and at O'Reilly's restaurant, which is the best restaurant in Old Havana. And it was an Irishman who would become a part of the Spanish army, I guess, during the Charles III or whatever those Catholic wars were, and became governor of Havana for a while in the 1700s. So it's got all kinds of culture. There's everyone smiling, everybody's nice, I gotta say. You walk down the street and it's got that a little bit of the New Orleans feel almost, with the there's balconies on the second floors, and there are people coming, like kids coming by on stilts with brass bands, kind of not for All the Saints, but the Spanish version of that. And it really works. It's a really cool place. So we are definitely going back. And I actually proposed a business idea down there to somebody that I'm going to follow up on, which could be fun.
And did you go over to Gitmo?
No. We just stayed in Havana. Two of our daughters stayed and went out west, I guess. And they're going to be they're hiking now, and they brought the translators with them and the art historian too. And so they're hiking and looking at like Santiago and other areas. But Gitmo, I guess, is way further out on the other side, and we just didn't have time to do it. But by the way, we stayed in an Airbnb that was spectacular. We had a 1,500 square foot terrace overlooking the ocean. It was stupid. I mean, we were like, disgusted with ourselves for having something that nice. And of course, the woman who runs it with her helper, they come in and make you breakfast in the morning that would like knock your socks off. I mean, really, really quite a nice experience. And it's, I know people are pinching pennies everywhere, but if you ever get a chance to try it, go check out Cuba. It's not what you think. And I still would like to see a free Cuba like I did before, but but there was a lot of nice things to see and a lot of wonderful people.
Well, that's great. And you know how far we've come in the last. Well, was it 3 years ago that Obama opened?
Yeah, he opened it. He opened it, and then Trump closed it. So, but in that first year, a million American tourists came apparently, and that's dropped dramatically. But although I don't know why, because you can't jump on a plane and go there. There are no restrictions. Cubans, by the way, travel all over the world. They don't have any travel restrictions. So, but it's just expensive for them to do it. because especially if they're government employees, they just don't make enough. The private sector employees do make enough, and they bring U.S. dollars back. They buy things in the U.S. and then bring them back and sell them there, and it's a very good market. So, but it's an interesting place, like really interesting, and I didn't get any sense of bitterness from anybody towards Americans whatsoever. Little kids in school uniforms with the kerchiefs around. I mean, it was nice. It was very, very, very nice. And if you like the Caribbean, or if you don't insist on first world accommodations, it's definitely worth a visit. If you like to go to, if Four Seasons is a requirement, maybe it's not for you, but for everybody else, it's a good spot. Oh, and the cars, magnificent. I mean, just incredible.
From the 50s, yeah.
I said 70. I said 70 years later, or almost 70 years later, because we took a 49 Ford back one night from the Hotel Nacional, which is where the mobsters all organized it's where the mob families all kind of organized North America in 1946. But we took one back. It was a 70-year-old car with the original engine, absolutely pristine. I have no idea how they keep them that way. I mean, not a clue, but they're all over the place. And it's, 57 Chevy, 55 Cadillac, I mean, it's, whatever was there, they kept going, and they gleam, and they look like they're right off the assembly line, some of them. Not all of them, but quite a few of them.
Well, that's great. Did you take a lot of pictures?
Georgia did. My daughter did.
Oh, good. And, so you guys send them around.
We'll move them around. Yeah, exactly. Good. I think they're all of her, different poses, but you can look behind her and see what's there.
So, what do you think you missed while you were gone? A lot.
Well, I just came back to see, and I know we're talking to a national audience, but I just came back to see the mess that is the New York State budget, which is just out of control.
Which is $175 billion, which is second only to the state of California.
Yeah, and I think when I started working in politics in '86 in New York, it was somewhere around $30 billion, and you get an idea of how much that's grown. Right, governor gave himself a raise. They passed a law, although it's got to go through. They have to pass it one more time, and then it goes for a referendum to bring the voting age to 16 in New York.
Yeah,
they did congestion pricing, $100 million for so-called campaign finance, so that the taxpayers have to pay for political campaigns now. And of course they restrict spending, commensurate with that, so that you can't spend enough to win without going into public funding. It's just a mess, congestion pricing.
Well, did you see the governor kept emphasizing in his remarks last night when they were about to pass it that this is the most progressive budget ever passed in New York State, and certainly he thinks the most progressive budget in the country. And the fact that word is now a bumper sticker, or a badge of honor, is it tells you everything you need to know about New York State and also the state of the party and the politics.
Yeah, I found that curious too, Liz, and I was wondering. He floated 2 days before the budget that he might run for a fourth term in New York. He's in his third now. And he was adamantly opposed to his father running for Governor Mario Cuomo, that people may remember, who was always teased as a presidential candidate and almost ran in, I guess, 1992. But Cuomo said that he was planning to run for a fourth term, and then he passed the budget. And I'm wondering whether he's going to pivot to being a presidential candidate, because he is playing that progressive word up so much.
And I haven't talked to anyone who's heard any rumblings around that. I mean, you and I have talked about this, and you and I have talked about him even pairing up with Joe Biden, which, of course, there's been a lot of Biden news over the last 48 hours, too.
It could be interesting.
So let's talk about that. What do you think about these claims that the touchy-feely Biden has crossed the line, and that particularly, obviously, given all the heightened sensitivity and this discussion about sexual harassment and abuse of power and everything, that Biden now finds himself in this really unusual position. He was the darling a month ago, and now it seems like his own Democratic colleagues are anonymously getting the knives out and talking. And the press never reported this stuff. This stuff's been out there about Biden for years. Just the fact that he's always touching and hugging and kissing and.
Yeah, what I really think about it, the risk of being yelled at by lots of women I know in New York, I think it's utterly ridiculous. I think it's totally ridiculous. If I brought any one of my daughters to Washington and went and did something, and the vice president came by and grabbed him on the shoulder and kissed him on the back of the head, I would think that was lovely. Honest to God. I mean, maybe I'm crazy as a guy, but I don't see anything wrong with it. Am I off base on that one? It may be just different perspective. It could be a different perspective because I'm a male.
No, listen, I think that the fact that this has now become a big issue, the guy ran for and was elected vice president of the United States.
Right.
And there's nothing new. It's not, it's the hypocrisy. Here we go again, right? With the media and also with the party, whoever doesn't want him to run. And I'm assuming it's the female candidates who are putting this out there and really stoking it. I think he's made a big miscalculation by waiting this long to decide whether or to announce whether to get in or get out. What he's done is opened up this opportunity for people to say, you know what, we don't need this baggage now. Whereas if he had come out 2 months ago and said he was running, I just think this would have been a lot less significant a story. People are trying to keep him out.
Yeah, you may very well be right. Where I was thinking was that he should delay, but you make a very good point, because when you're half in, you're just open. It's open season on you, and you don't have the apparatus to defend yourself.
Yeah, and it's given everybody else a chance. Like Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who's really now he's tied with Elizabeth Warren in the polls, but beyond that, he raised $7 million in the first quarter. He's getting a ton of great press. He seems to be certainly holding his own on the credential side. His policies are not as crazy as AOC, and yet he certainly represents enough of what the progressives are looking for that he's very appealing. And by contrast, you've got now 78-year-old, 75-year-old Bernie Sanders and Biden. I just think he missed his window. And I also think, given that Trump had a very successful week last week, as we talked about, the banner 48-hour period between Avenatti and
he could not have had a better 48 hours.
Exactly. So for a long time, we've been talking about we'll just bring in an adult, and if Biden did one term, it could stabilize things. But I think that opportunity is gone too.
Yeah. I assume that usually it's you do the parties do their flirtation with a few candidates, and then they come back to like in 2008, John McCain, he started as a favorite, then went down to the bottom. He was in 8th place in a horse race of 8 or whatever it was, and then at the end you always come back to the one who's next in line. And the question is whether I think Biden is next in line or whether he's past his time. But I still think he bounces back. But I just don't know who they default to. Like, who does that party default to at this point?
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke. I don't know either.
Yeah.
I still think Kamala Harris is probably the strongest.
I do too.
All things. Do you? Yeah.
I think they're looking at everybody else, and that she's one of the ones they're going to come back to. It's like, okay, like we've got this. Who else is at the dance? And they'll look around, and then they can fall back to Kamala. It's probably the safest for them, wouldn't you think? She signed on to the Green New Deal, which is ridiculous, and the abortion thing she did also, which is insane and disgusting. But she's not terrifying on the criminal justice front. She's not a seething radical, other than those votes, which were seething. But
and why do you think she's doing so much better than Elizabeth Warren?
I think Elizabeth Warren is seen as a crackpot. And I know you respect her, and we talked about that last week.
Well, no.
I don't mean her positions, but you
right.
said she has substance.
She does have substance.
Right.
She does. I do think so. But she's not catching on. Now, listen, she might be doing all the right things on the ground very quietly. We'll see.
Yeah.
But she's not been reporting her fundraising numbers, and that's not a good sign unless she's going to come out of thin air.
Right.
I did read a story that our finance director resigned yesterday, I guess because he was fed up with the having to raise all this money from the grassroots, and because she swore off any kind of PAC money and any corporate money. So trying to build a finance machine there was a challenge, so he bailed.
Right.
So I don't know. It's more of that, but I think the Biden stuff's very revealing. I think. The timing of it and the nature. And also, there hasn't been one candidate who's defended him. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. I had not noticed it. I had not noticed it, but I could think of no one that has.
So I wonder, I actually haven't checked to see what Gillibrand has said about it, but since she was, first out of the gate on the
Al Franken, right?
Al Franken stuff, right? You would think this would she might have been the one to take a first public swing, but I haven't seen anything.
Right, and I think she's been very friendly with Biden also. So it's It's a tough. It's not beyond her to do it. I mean, there's no question. But talking about someone going nowhere, I mean, she's just sitting there.
Yeah.
What's the appeal? Like you've gotten a chance to take a look at Mayor Pete. I still haven't seen him speak. What is he that interesting?
I think what's interesting about him is he's a little bit of every man, and that he's Midwestern. Listen, he's a veteran. He speaks multiple languages. He's at Harvard, and he's a Rhodes Scholar, so he is articulate and believable. Or when I say believable, he looks like his convictions are real, and he's unscripted. But he's, as he says, he's a mayor of a small city. I think South Bend's got like 100,000 residents. But he's worked across the aisle. In fact, he worked very closely with Pence when Pence was the governor out there. He doesn't need to know what's going on the ground across America. He's living it every day as an accountable mayor. I've looked up his position on a couple of the social issues. He's way out on the left on abortion. I mean, he's as far as he's has not sworn off late term.
The whole the whole party's out there. The whole Democratic Party.
The whole party
gone insane, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's why Biden's also really having a hard time.
Yeah, is he not all the way on that?
No, he's not. And and a part of this is that people are digging up what he said 20 years ago, saying the Supreme Court went too far with Roe. We also said, he as a Catholic, he's always been very conflicted about this. Now, in the last 15 years or so, he's been trying to be much more vocal about he's done a lot with domestic violence and women and Sexual Assault Act, all kinds, but he's never been, it's not his favorite issue, let's put it that way. And if he never had to talk about it,
he'd be happy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. He and the Bushes, right? Exactly. Yep.
Yep. But I think Mayor Pete is probably more than anybody, he's got to be taken away from Beto O'Rourke, because he's not this sweeping rhetoric and jumping around on coffee tables and waving his hands in the air. He's got substance, and he's got a track record, and he doesn't look like a self-promoter, which is either a great art form and he's mastered it, or it's real. But he just raised $7 million. That's a lot of money in one quarter.
Yeah, it sure is, and it's interesting if he does. I mean, I assume that he's not going to be able to compete in the long run. I mean, just when you get down to the caucus level and the primary level, like you really need a lot of institutional support for those things. And
right.
But it would be interesting if he does well enough. Does that open up the presidency to mayors all across the country? Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of mayors. They're executives. You've been a mayor, Liz, and only how hard a job that is. And I mean, your butt's on the line every day, and you're responsible for every penny. That would be an interesting development. I mean, I always liked governors for president, but mayors, go figure.
Well, you and I talked about this, I think, last week. Bloomberg was the one who used to say this all the time, that it's mayors who are going to turn the country around because they are accountable and listen. They've got to be responsive. They're running into people in their supermarket on Sundays. The people who actually, who voted them into office and who could vote them out very quickly. So, and they deal with everything from healthcare and pensions to infrastructure and snow removal and leaves and parks and you name it. Budgets. There isn't a mayor in America who is allowed to not deliver a budget on time.
That's
this nonsense that goes on. There are no CRs when you're a mayor. It's like, here's your time. And you're right about governors too. But interestingly, as we've acknowledged, there are no governors in this race for 2020.
Yeah, a couple former governors, but no governors. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew corrected me and said John Hickenlooper, but I wasn't counting him.
Right. I don't think a lot of people are. So, but he's got a great name. That's a.
Oh God,
Liz, what do you make of the border stuff? That was the other thing I came back to was the numbers are just staggering. The 100,000 plus is a month. Like, what do you take of? Do you think it helps Trump to shut that border if he goes ahead and does it? Or hurts them, or I saw a story out today. We're going to be out of avocados in 2 weeks if he shuts the border. I'm like, we can live without avocados for 2 weeks. Come on, you know what I mean?
Well, I noticed how he said yesterday we have no beds left. We can't put anyone anymore. There are no beds. That's why we can't take everyone in. Look, I think when we look at Trump's numbers, we know that when he does best is when he delivers on what he said he was going to do. Right. So whether the general population doesn't agree with him necessarily, but back to what his base, and maybe even broader than his base, it's not a move that that we were unprepared for. He has said from day one, and I heard Kellyanne Conway repeating it yesterday, take him at his word. he said he was going to close the border. And now I think one of the bigger questions I haven't seen as much talk about over the last 24 hours is, what does it mean that he's cutting off aid to all these Central American countries, holding them accountable too?
Right.
Saying that, right, Guatemala and El Salvador, and that's it. He's cutting off aid because he knows they can do more to keep the flow all the way north. I mean, that's a big move.
It's a big move, and the issue has to be forced. You got to force. I mean, everybody's punted on this, and I'm not. I rarely sing Trump's accolades, but on this one, if it has to be done, do it. I know it's going to cause a lot of disruption, but sometimes you need to disrupt. I mean, you can't have 100,000 people a month coming into a country.
No,
you can't do it. I mean, you can if it's legal, and that's what people determine is a acceptable level, or what's the word for it? A level where you could do assimilation.
We could tell.
Yeah, that's one thing, but not people coming in undocumented. That's insanity.
It is insanity. I think what's hard to reconcile is the defense of all of this, that, we're at a crisis. And if you go to the border, you can just see, throngs and throngs of people. And then you get people down in El Paso who say there's no crisis down here. There's no threat. There's no violence. There are no drugs coming through. So I don't know. I mean, we're only seeing whatever pictures the news, supplies to us, but the numbers don't lie when it comes to the number of people coming over. That's for damn sure.
And we've seen it in my town. I live in a small town of 10,000. And I don't mean, I don't say this, I don't want the word overwhelmed to sound the wrong way, but our schools have been overwhelmed by new immigrants that are mostly undocumented. They're mostly illegal immigrants. And, and we know a lot of them. They're the classmates of our kids, and they're, you have no choice but to, your friends. We go to the same church. But they have been overwhelmed, and the budgets get overwhelmed. And it's just, I told you my daughter's elementary school, she's now out of elementary school, but the default language in the school is Spanish for everybody. And that's just crazy. I mean, that's nuts. And I get that the budget, because they have to do ESL, the English as a second language, or whatever it's called now. There's a new acronym, but they're required to do that. So the only way they can run the school within the budget is to make it a Spanish speaking school. And it's just, it's weird. It's a weird thing. So, I mean, it does affect little towns all across America, and you feel it.
Oh, certainly in the schools, starting with the schools and the hospitals and the services.
Right,
yeah.
but then again, if it was legal immigration, that would be a different story. There are positive things. You have people like working like crazy hard. You've got it certainly is helping the Catholic churches in the U.S. That need all the help they can get right now. But there's they're good families here. They're good people here. But the chaos of illegal immigration and kind of the doubts about the viability of a nation and being unable to come up with an immigration system that works is, I think, far surpasses the benefits. So I don't mind if he forces it. I know it's going to be ugly, but I really don't mind.
Well, listen, someone's got to force it. And maybe this is actually what will ultimately lead to some kind of sweeping immigration. I don't know. There are some big groups out that are trying to get together to work on this, and not one piece at a time, but to actually do a comprehensive immigration overhaul. But, I just am such a pessimist when it comes to this. I don't see how we're going to get anything done before the 2020 election. I'd like to see something that would actually require everyone taking a position on it, one whole package of stuff, but we're just going to get a lot of finger pointing and moralizing, and we're better than this as a country, and this isn't who we are, and blah, 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 blah. I don't see anything concrete happening.
Right. That's probably right. And, but he's got a little bit of momentum going on, and there's the press that hates him, certainly, and they'll stay knocking at him. But, if he added like a term limits thing on and started, I still think his greatest growth potential is in the African American community, and I think if he pivoted his messaging quite a bit in that area and did a term limits thing, he'd be really difficult to beat. I think it'd be really, really tough.
I do too. Did you see that Michelle Obama's memoir is the highest selling memoir in the history of the universe? No. She's so no, truly. She's so
the Dr. Spock's
10 million copies. I mean, it's, as a memoir, it's really striking. So, and I bring that up only to say, she could be very effective in the campaigning for a candidate in 2020.
That really is interesting, especially because, book sales are so down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really, what was the number that you said? Was it 10 million?
10 million, yeah. And that was as of 3 days ago. Who knows? Maybe check Amazon now. You can find out.
That's a staggering number when you consider that Andrew Cuomo sold about 3,000 books of, and it was on the market. It's been on the market for years. Maybe it's up to 3,500 now, but it's been on the market since 2014. That's staggering. Wow.
Yeah. And also, given that she has still, it's not as if she was out of the public eye for a long time, and then there would be sort of nostalgia or longing for it. I mean, she's been accessible and available for since they left the White House. So I think it's big. I'm actually a big fan of Susan Page. I don't know if you know her, but she's out just today with a new biography of Barbara Bush.
I know the name. I've never read Susan Page, but
oh, she's wonderful. Yep. She used to write for Newsday, and now she's the Washington bureau chief for USA Today.
I saw some of the coverage. Actually, I saw some of the coverage of the book about some marital issues, the marital issues the Bushes had early on. But I didn't know Susan Page before.
Oh, she's terrific, and she had. I think she was one of only 2 people outside the Bush family who had ever seen Barbara Bush's personal diaries, and Barbara Bush shared them with her before she died. And she conducted a number of in-person interviews with her as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. But because she holds a very special place in history, as we all know. And
Barbara Bush was so beloved, and you knew her. I got to meet her once or twice, but she's another one of those first ladies that just everybody loved,
Yes. Yep. There's interesting too that she was much more open later in life about how she and the Reagans were never close, and she and Nancy Reagan in particular did not like each other.
They're so very different. I mean,
Yes. Yep. So, I want to talk to you. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see any or all of the town hall that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did last week with Chris Hayes.
I did not. I was actually away, and I saw one little tiny bit of coverage. Can you tell us about it? I'd love to hear about it.
It's my favorite topic. And when she talks about people being obsessed with her, I have to plead guilty, only because I'm obsessed to really largely because I can't understand how she's been able to drive this this whole agenda. You got to give her credit for that, when she has really forced the party to take positions on issues that are not going to help them, I don't think, in the long run in 2020. But, God forbid, never let the facts get in the way of her lectures. And I have to tell you, Chris Hayes did a terrible job. He didn't correct her on any of this stuff. But she, and the audience, of course, was handpicked, so everybody was cheering every time she opened her mouth. But what was not kind to Joe Crowley, who was the Democrat she unseated, who she pointed out was the 4th most powerful Democrat in the Congress, accusing him of being too removed from his constituents and not representing the district. And she actually said, we're returning the party and returning our country back to real democratic representation. And I thought it was a big overstep, and also reading way too much into her victory, but that's just me. Again, no humility.
And I heard when she won that she did not handle it graciously with Crowley, who was incredibly gracious to her, at least publicly. And even on election night, I think he did a number of things that were gentlemanly, and she was not gracious back.
Yeah, you could say that's just her age or just a lack of class, but I think it's a lack of humility and understanding that there are people who serve. You might not agree with them, you might not like them, but to treat yourself like that the world didn't start till you got up that morning and spun it out of Texas is really offensive. We've talked about this. I can't imagine how Nancy Pelosi and those who've been around actually doing the hard work, whether you and I agree with them or not, is a different story. And you've got her. And she's now raising money already for candidates for the next cycle.
Yep. And she's going to set up a lot of primaries, and it's it'll be interesting to see how that goes in that party. I mean, there is definitely a civil war brewing in the Democratic Party, more so than in the Republican Party,
Well, what did the DCCC say? They said that they were trying to control the whole primary process.
as is the RNC, and they're they're telling her hands off. But we'll see. I mean, when you're young and wide-eyed, do you think you can change the world? And and it stops when the world beats you to smithereens. That takes a few years.
Yeah. Well, she was, she's unfortunately is not a student of history. She accused FDR of a power grab and suggesting that we had to pass a term limit amendment because he was going to run for another term, and she seemed to have forgotten that he actually died in office.
Right.
He wasn't going to run, and that amendment didn't pass for 20-something years after he died. She just throws this stuff out there, and as I said, Chris Hayes, who actually I think is a really bright guy, and I think he adds a lot to the
and he let her get away with that.
He let her get away with it. He lets her get away with it. It's a whole and Anderson Cooper's the same way that when it comes to that stuff. I can't stand.
Which is true. Yorktown High School is a pretty good school. It's of course Westchester, not in the Bronx, because she plays that she's an inner city person, but she actually went to school and was raised in Westchester County, which is pretty pretty smoothie. But she's made a lot of those mistakes, and it's one thing when you talk too much, you're going to fumble. You're going to do it. And of course, in some fairness to her, there's a microphone in her face wherever she goes now, and she probably has 100 media requests a day. But there is a way, you can turn it off if you want. It's a voluntary activity.
Yes, it is. I she doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
No, she doesn't.
Oh my gosh! The post and the obsession too with the all day tweeting and selfies. I mean, I'm not on Instagram. I don't know if you are, but I just a little more about me.
Yeah, a little bit more about me. Exactly. Hey, Liz, can we go back to a second for Joe Biden? I was thinking of all the Drudge. The Drudge has a kind of a photo spread of Biden with people, with women. Like you knew my father. My father, they used to call him Captain Kisser, when he was in high school, because he'd always kiss people hello. It was also something that happened in Havana. Everybody, besides smoking cigars wherever you want, that kind of thing, which to me was kind of nice. People would kiss hello. They'd come over. The women would come over and kiss you hello. Every one of them the first time they met you. And it's, it occurs to me that my father wouldn't be able to survive today. And I mean, Biden's of that generation. I don't want to obsess on it, but it's an unfair standard to me. It's, am I wrong?
No, I think there's more nuance to it than that.
There's creepiness, and then there's, I understand there's a difference, and I'm sure you've been the subject where, I'm afraid. I don't know what to do with women anymore. I mean, I just shake hands, which is fine, but I'm so uncomfortable. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know. I always feel when I'm, going on the elevator, what do I do? Do I hold the door? Do I get up in the subway? Do I no one knows what I just go old school and plead that I'm from the 60s and 70s, but it's a hard, we don't know what to do anymore.
Well, I feel badly for you. I'll tell you, you can carry my bag anytime. I find these women are nuts. The ones who say, I can carry my own bag. Why would you? When some nice gentleman just came over and offered to carry your bag. I think that's a shame. And I think the confusion over roles and responsibilities. And I know everyone who dates now, and it's all sharing money and everything's 50-50, and women are always trying to assert their independence. And I think we're confusing things here. You can be very independent and still have chivalry in your life with a man. I mean, my husband always still opens the car door for me, and he still walks on the outside of the street.
Right,
it's
exactly.
great.
Yeah, exactly.
Sidewalk. And I've never asked him to. It's just always been like that. And I would like to think that my boys would do that, and that I know you do that. I think the Biden thing gets a little bit tricky. I mean, there have been videos maybe for the last year circulating about him doing, the shoulder rub and the hair sniffing. I mean, I do think.
Okay, the hair sniffing is a little weird.
It's weird. It's weird. That part's weird. I think he's mishandled this. I would have been out 2 days ago and said, okay, well, he did finally put out a statement saying, I've always, comforted people and kissed them hello and everything, but it was overdue, and they should have slammed. Someone should be out there on his behalf slamming this stuff and saying, stop it. So I'm with you on that. I think the timing of it is just obvious. But I don't understand why he hasn't handled any of this stuff better. I think this whole thing has been a mess. But I don't know. How come we still have a governor of Virginia, Ralph North? He's still there, and the attorney general in Virginia is still in office, and he's been accused of rape.
And you won the bet on the governor, by the way. I think we should acknowledge it now that we have the opportunity. I bet that he would be gone by the next week, and he hung in there and survived the news cycle, and he's probably stronger for it.
He sure did. He sure did. I would imagine that the Democratic Party is sitting here saying, we can't make these claims about Trump and say that he's awful and all these things if we have a candidate who has some kind of cloud hanging over his head. I'm sure this is what they're talking about. Meanwhile, we have far bigger things to be worried about in this country.
But as you said, it's clear. I mean, just looking at it as people who have worked in politics for a lot of years, it's just, it's so clear what's going on here. They need to get rid of the 800-pound gorilla, who's Joe Biden in the race. I mean, they need to destroy him, and the women are taking him down. Not all of them, but some of them are going out there, and you really don't get anywhere. People say, shouldn't politics be nicer, and that type of sentiment. But you don't get anywhere without attacking and making headlines and taking down your opponents, and that's what they're doing. And
it's hard for me to swallow the fact that the party's turning on him so quickly after he has, for 35 years, gone around and campaigned for and raised money in every single district. He was like George Bush this way, every school district race practically in America, and been the ultimate party loyalist and party soldier. And I don't think anyone's entitled to a nomination ever. I don't buy into that. But the idea that there's no one standing behind him after this is
Liz, that's exactly what bothered me. That you hit it on the head for me was the first woman, I forgot her name, was she in Louisiana or someplace, who went after him for kissing her on the back of the head. And he had come in Nevada.
Oh, Nevada. Yeah,
and he had come in and spoken for her 2 or 3 times. And it was like, you ungrateful, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, he grabbed her boob or something. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean? But he's like stood behind her, like, okay, whatever, if you want to look at it that way. But how she probably begged to get the vice president to stand with her in that district 15 times with the DNC. You got to get him here. And he got on a plane and went to, I guess, Nevada. And I'm sure it was a big pain in the butt for him, but he did it because you're right, because he's moved all over the country. McCain was like that too. McCain would go anywhere for people, and George Bush. And it's rare. A lot of the electeds will not do that. They will not travel. Once they're in there, it's like, good luck to the rest of you. But Biden, you're right, has been a loyal soldier for the Democrats forever, and to turn around and slap him in the face like that, to me, is just gross. I mean, it tells me who you are, and that I don't like her as a result.
Yeah, it's true. I agree with that. So I'm sure a lot more will play out with this over the next 48 hours. But the press gave him a pass for all those years, and why do you think that was?
Yeah, because he was Joe Biden. I think he was Joe Biden. He was the avuncular Joe Biden, and like I always joke, you could smell the Aqua Velva almost. When you would hear his name, he comes from that world. He's a chummy, touchy guy, and we all know people who are touchy inappropriate is a different thing. But there's some people that are just very physical and the Pepe Le Pews of the world. I mean, I don't think he's that bad, but I think they just incorporate it, and maybe nobody made an issue of it. Maybe that's what's different, is that with the Me Too, which is a legitimate, obviously a legitimate breakthrough for women and viewpoint. It's just set up to take them down. I mean, the conversation pre-exists, and they're taking advantage of it. Although I think if he survives this, it will strengthen him. I'm a kind of a big proponent of it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger in politics. That if he weathers this, he'll be even stronger.
Yeah. I do think now that he has to make a decision sooner or later. I mean, sooner rather than later. Yeah.
He does, and he also may think. I mean, they may easily chase him out of the race, and maybe that's why they're doing it now too. As you said, Liz, before, is that if they hear that there's any indecision, and word does get around pretty quickly, one consultant can pass it out. Yeah, he really hasn't decided yet. They may want to make the field look so miserable or the endeavor so unpalatable that he thinks, this is for the birds. I've had a great career. I don't need to do this again.
Yeah, and to run and lose or to go through this for the next 4 months Oh, it's going to be tough. He's had enough. By the way, we all know he's had enough in his life to do this. I'm sure he's seen in living color, though, who his real friends are.
Exactly.
With this.
Exactly.
And it's gotta hurt. Yeah. It's gotta hurt.
That's always something I always tell people that are coming up in politics is when someone's getting hit, when the FBI kicks through their door, when all the chips are down, that's when you call the person, That's when you back them up and you say, whatever you need, whether the person's guilty or not, do you need any help? Do you need anything? You know what I mean? If you've been friends, stay friends, don't run.
Yeah. And I bet you he's going through this whole list of people he's gone, like I said, in campaign for and helped out quietly, helped their family get into a cancer treatment place that they couldn't get into. I mean, you name it, he's done it all. I wonder where the Obama people are in all this.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, that's a great question. You would think that would be a perfect time for Michelle Obama to step forward.
One would think. One would think, right? But even on her book tour, she could spend a minute doing it. But have you been following on to another topic? Because we only have a couple more minutes yet. The Georgia heartbeat thing?
You mentioned it to me earlier today, and it was the first I knew of it. It sounds wonderful to me. And I think I heard someone complaining about it last week. I wasn't sure if it was a Georgia bill. I thought it was a national bill, a federal bill, but it must be the Georgia bill. Where is that now in the legislature?
The governor's going to sign it today. And maybe what you heard was that it was pending, and it's not the Actors Guild, but about 50 actors who actually produce or star or participate, star in shows that are filmed down in TV and movies down in Georgia, say that they will never bring their business there anymore. They will cancel the shows. They won't do it all. So that, I think, got the bill some national attention. But it's a pretty strict bill. It would prohibit doctors from performing abortions after a heartbeat is detected, which is basically about 6 weeks. And those who do perform the abortions could lose their medical licenses. And there are exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother, but beyond that, they're not. And of course, there's a lot of misinformation out there about the bill that the mothers could be put in jail, and it's not about that. It's about essentially that Georgia recognizes that legally a 6-week-old fetus that has a heartbeat deserves the same protection that you or I do walking around. And the other bills of similar consequence have been debated. In fact, Tennessee had one, but they ended up not going forward because they figured they couldn't stand up on appeal in court. So the Supreme Court. But Georgia feels differently. They think they can. And based on what I just said about sort of the legal rights of a 6-week-old.
It's the 3D sonogram has done so much for that issue, because this generation is more, you say pro-choice, pro-life. You don't know what that means anymore, but they're more hesitant on the abortion side than any generation previously, because of that 3D sonogram where you can see that image, you can see the heartbeats, you can see the baby's laugh in the womb. And to me, that's a very positive thing. I know other people feel strongly the other way. We were talking about yesterday. There's a couple of movies out there that have had a hard time getting screenings. One was Gosnell, of course, which was about the terrible doctor who went to prison for doing postnatal abortions and murders. And there's another movie that's supposed to be wonderful called Unplanned. Have you heard about that, Liz?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that might be what we were confusing these two things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've heard all about it. That came out last week, and a lot of the networks refused to air
which is a great story, right? I mean, how is that possible?
Yes.
You have somebody. It's a film about a woman who who was a senior director of Planned Parenthood, who had a personal revelation, and she switched. How are they blocking that?
I know. And of course, the more they block it, the more people want to see it. So that's always, to me, is always backfires that approach, but I don't know how they are. And why wouldn't you want everyone to, I don't care where you stand on this issue, why wouldn't you want to go see what happened? What was the conversion? And now we all know the story that she actually witnessed in one of the clinics, an abortion. She saw this, fetus with arms and legs kicking and basically resisting the procedure. And she just said she was so horrified at herself for having been part of this, and she, and she holds herself accountable for having, been at the forefront of a lot of the abortion activity that had gone on at Planned Parenthood. So the fact that people who don't agree with it won't see it. I've seen a lot of things I don't agree with.
Right, of course.
I'm sure you have too.
But it's called Unplanned. If anybody wants to check it out in theaters, I've got to find it around here if I can find it around here. But it sounds like a genuinely interesting movie. I mean, I'd like to see it. And I think was there a Jane Roe movie at some point? Because I know she became an ardent pro-life activist. And I don't know if they've ever done a feature film on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if one appears if this one does well. But you're right.
Well, it's interesting. I was sort of comparing it to Dead Man Walking.
Yes.
Remember Sister Préjean when Susan Sarandon played that, where people who were for the death penalty then saw that. And my position on the death penalty has evolved dramatically over the last 20 years. And wrongful convictions and who even has access to good defense, and it really has to make you question in what cases the death penalty should be applied. But anyway, that movie changed a lot of people's minds. Why wouldn't you go see this?
I'm gonna go look at theaters for it and see. But you're right. They're by blocking the film, they're gonna get a lot. They're giving it a lot more publicity. And that's the great thing about that's a great thing about a free press that's even not so free is that information still gets out, somehow it does.
Yeah.
I think we were out of time, Liz, and I hopefully this will work when the Zencast will work when I stop the recording and download it. It will be all here as a show.
Thank you for finding this. It should change the quality of forevermore for our listeners. So
thank you, Rick Robinson. Yeah,
so patient because we have. Exactly. Yes, exactly. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
For sure.
Thanks, Liz. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
But now, wait a minute. I'm talking about America, sweet America. God done shed his grace on thee. He gave me crown not good. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea